Even as president, Trump focused on hush money, Cohen says The New York Times. President Trump's former lawyer told Congress on Wednesday that Mr. Trump remained deeply involved in the arrangement to pay hush money to a pornographic film actress, even while in the White House, telling him just a year ago to lie to a journalist about the president's involvement. Testifying before the House Oversight Committee, the lawyer, Michael D. Cohen, also for the first time publicly implicated the president's eldest son, Donald Jr., and the chief financial officer of his company, Alan Weisselberg, in the arrangement involving the actress, Stormy Daniels. She had been paid. He knew about everything, Mr. Cohen said of Mr. Trump. Everything had to go. While federal prosecutors in New York had laid out a general narrative around the payments, including Mr. Trump's involvement, Mr. Cohen explicitly placed Mr. Trump at the center of the events, producing checks he described as evidence of the role the president and his company played. Mr. Cohen pleaded guilty last summer to campaign finance crimes relating to payments made to Ms. Daniels and a second woman, Karen McDougal, who also said she had had an affair with Mr. Trump. He is scheduled to. Republican members of the committee on Wednesday repeatedly challenged Mr. Cohen's remarks as untrustworthy, and even before Mr. Cohen was sworn in, the president posted on Twitter that he was lying in order to reduce his prison time. The Trump campaign, but in testimony punctuated with flashes of anger and regret, Mr. Cohen said he had seen the errors of his ways and was determined to serve as a positive role model to his children. Insisting he described a meeting with the president in February 2017 when Mr. Trump said two of the checks written to Mr. Cohen as reimbursement for the $130,000 had gotten caught up in the White House mail. "I am visiting President Trump in the Oval Office for the first time, and it's truly awe-inspiring," Mr. Cohen said. "He's showing me all." Last year, Mr. Cohen said, the president contacted him after the Wall Street Journal first reported the payment to Ms. Daniels. Mr. Cohen said that he, Mr. Trump and Mr. Weisselberg discussed coordinating a statement that rebutted the report and that asserted that Mr. Cohen had paid Ms. Daniels on his own. He also described, separately, Mr. Cohen said one of his greatest misgivings surrounding the hush money involved the First Lady, Melania Trump. Mr. Cohen said, "He asked me to pay off an adult film star with whom he had an affair, and to lie to his wife about it, which I did," he said in his opening remarks. Lying to the first, Mr. Cohen, who had worked for a decade at the Trump family business, also offered the clearest suggestion yet that Mr. Weisselberg, a stalwart of the company, was a key figure behind the effort to conceal the hush money. The executive has. Mr. Cohen suggested that the president and Mr. Weisselberg were mindful of the political and legal tightrope they were walking. He described a meet. "I had asked Alan to use his money. I didn't want to use mine, and he said he couldn't," Mr. Cohen testified. "He asked me if Mr. Cohen paid the money and in 2017 filed sham invoices to the Trump Organization, according to prosecutors. On Wednesday, Mr. Cohen produced two checks that he said were among 11 installments to reimburse him. One check. Wednesday's congressional hearing is focusing in part on how much Trump knew about hush money payments and a proposed Trump Tower in Moscow. Asked why Ms. Daniels received the sum of $130,000, Mr. Cohen said it was the amount she had requested. Without the payment, Mr. Cohen had long been aware of Ms. Daniels and the alleged affair. In 2011, it was down to the wire, Mr. Cohen told lawmakers on Wednesday, explaining why he initially paid her out of his own pocket. A lawyer for Mr. Weisselberg declined to comment. Mr. Weisselberg, in response to questions from lawmakers on Wednesday, Mr. Cohen also mentioned Mr. Weisselberg as someone who would know about other possible irregularities at Mr. Trump's company. That Mr. Cohen was also involved in the hush money payment to Ms. McDougal, a former Playboy model who received $125,000 from American Media Incorporated, the publisher of the National Enquirer. Mr. Cohen, he was supposed to pay, Mr. Cohen said of the president. He was supposed to. Prosecutors said last summer that Mr. Cohen had promised to reimburse AMI for the money paid to Ms. McDougal. In October 2, Opinion Noah bookbinder.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Cracking, fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.